Hey there! Welcome to the Hearing Series. I'm your host, Jessica Laurie, and in this channel, we'll be talking about all different things hearing related. So let's get into it. As your host, I should tell you a bit about myself. I am a 2013 graduate of the York University Teacher of the Deaf and Hard of Hearing program. I went the auditory oral route, so I bring another level of expertise on the auditory training side. I've taught in Ontario, British Columbia, and Alberta as a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing. I am a SOTA, sibling of a deaf adult. I'm the older sibling. There was a brief period of time in my career where the deaf and hard of hearing role wasn't funded. So during that time, I ran a music school, which was about 2.5 years, and it was great to see that flourish and ensure that the music curriculum was accessible. What else? So I had typical hearing up until the age 34, where I developed severe tinnitus, and that was life-changing. And while I'm on summer break, I absolutely love keeping busy painting, being out in nature, hitting the hiking trails, reading, and doing comedy shows. I'm a girl who loves to laugh. So the first initial episode of the hearing series is actually going to be dedicated to the deaf and hard of hearing Compass Tool that I developed. I developed this in 2021 as a tool to help people involved in the deaf and hard of hearing community. So it's designed in mind for teachers, audiologists, interpreters, family members, friends, counselors, psychologists, family support workers, employers, and school administrators. So compasses are a legendary tool. These have been around for centuries and utilized across many different cultures on this planet. So very helpful. And while it's great for providing directionality, it is also typically seen on a map. Well, in the deaf and hard of hearing community, we may see maps as when a person goes and gets their cochlear implant programs. And as that's plotted, the areas that are activated on the electrode, we would call that a mapping. And we also kind of see different plotting as a graph that's charted on a person's audiogram. So I liked kind of how this could go really well with the clinical tools in the deaf and hard of hearing community. And I really also liked how a map and the compass can provide different perspectives. So I utilize that as a jumping off point to create the DHH Compass Tool. Let's get into it. In today's session, we're only going to be focusing on the cardinal directions of the compass tool. So that's kind of like your never eat shredded wheat, kind of north, east, south, west. And I want you to just kind of get yourself in the mindset of first, we're going to look at the east direction. And in this direction, we're going to be contemplating the perspective of faith and outlook. And after we get through that part, we'll kind of do a dance around with the different directions and continue to explore those directional perspectives. Let's dive into it. All right, here we are in the east, taking a first look at faith. And I have complete faith that this deaf and hard of hearing compass tool can help those impacted by hearing loss. That total faith in. I also recognize the power of prayer. Now, some of you may have heard of the Serenity Prayer. Well, you know, as an individual who's gone through significant bouts of tinnitus, the Serenity Prayer was not cutting it. And I found myself really going through that internal dialogue and ending up finding my own voice over, how I would like to hear and the kind of interactions I would like to have with people, because communication and hearing do go hand in hand. And I had to have faith that, my voice and that prayer that I was praying over my hearing experience would have a ripple effect out. And I have seen this kind of also work for, students that have gone up for cochlear implants. And as they've kind of written out or talked about, how they would like their hearing experience to be, and even like their anxieties around the surgery and the healing process, they end up finding their own voice and the prayer that they would like to speak over themselves or the nurses, the ENT, and that whole process. It's been incredibly beautiful to witness, as well as support and kind of do the pre and post care with the student. So faith can absolutely play out, and that's also why it's in the east direction, because those are the pieces around beliefs. So this is an interactive process. I invite you to grab a piece of paper, and I have some investigatory questions for you to consider. What beliefs do you have about hearing and hearing loss? How are your ears? Feel free to kind of like bring your hands up and touch them. Are they there? And how do you feel about this body area? What do you believe about this body sense? And what do you believe about other people's ears? So feel free to just take some time, pause this video, and jot down those, because we will actually circle back on this in another direction. We're weaving it together. For the other side of faith is outlook in the east direction, and this really matters. This body sense matters because it's a big part of the human experience. There's been periods of time where the practice of eugenics has included the forced sterilization for those with hearing loss. And we've seen this, it's been documented as part of the Nazi occupation, and there was a stint of it also in the United States. So it had an impact on North America, where there was a law for the prevention of hereditary diseased offspring, and that impacted individuals who had the hearing loss along their family line. So the genetic component, they didn't want that passed on. Like, there were periods of time where individuals who had this felt sense deprivation were ostracized from community, pushed to the outskirts, and that also had an impact on employability, seen just as another human being. There's major life impacts with the deprivation of this felt sense. So I encourage you to take a moment to contemplate, whether or not you feel heard, understood, welcomed, and included in society. And that matters, because you matter. And how you approach other individuals who have hearing loss matters as well. So this east direction, just really staying curious about kind of like what you've learned about other people with hearing loss, or your own particular experience with hearing loss, how you think about it, how you bring those perceptions forward, and the faith pieces around it. What do you believe around it? So this is focusing in on that east direction. Let's get back to our compass. So here we are back at the Compass Tool, and we've had our chance to explore the east direction of faith and outlook. Now let's kind of get back into the middle of our compass and recalibrate ourselves to look to the west. Let's go. Let's get into the physical features of hearing, starting with the outer ear. So the outer ear is called the pinna, and it helps to collect and funnel sound waves into the ear canal. So the cool thing about pinnas is they can be like fingerprints. Uh, they're special to the individual. We also have quite a few reflexology points on the outer ear. I'll also touch base on the outer ear that can be helpful too with some movement pieces and touching around the ear. That is great for the lymphatic system. So stay tuned on that, especially if you have any sinus issues. Then we'll also touch on the middle ear, which of course we have the eardrum, the malleus, incus, stapes, and those all work together. Hang on, I don't know. They all kind of work together as a chain reaction to convert the sound wave into electric vibrations. And this kind of middle ear piece also includes the eustachian tube, okay, and connecting with the lymphatic system and the sinuses. So really helpful. And as I mentioned too about the outer ear massage piece, there's ways of working those areas to help drain the sinuses. And that touches on the eustachian too. Middle ear has the smallest bones, the three smallest bones, and the smallest muscle in the body. Like the stapedius muscle is just millimeters, and all those three smallest bones, the malleus, incus, and stapes, all of them can fit on the nail of your pinky. Like, this area of the body is a true powerhouse. All right, inner ear. In the cochlea, okay, we've got the teeny tiniest hair cells, especially if the hair cells are prevalent in a healthy organ of Corti. And then above it, we have these semicircular canals. Those semicircular canals are super important for balance as well. And the inner ear also includes our auditory nerve, which is connecting to the brain. So there's a major nervous system intersection. Okay, so that's the outer to inner part. Let's keep going. So while we're talking about the physical direction, we need to include types of hearing loss. So we have conductive, which can include the abnormalities with the external ear, the eardrum, and the ossicles of the middle ear, those three small bones. We include sensory neural, which results of the inner ear, so the cochlea or the vestibular nerve. Now, sensory neural can be syndromatic or non-syndromatic, and that's when the sensory neural loss has no other associated abnormalities. We have tinnitus. I'm not going to ever say that right. I'm doing the best I can. That's when we have the ringing of the ears, and there's a major nervous system connection, and it also has an impact on speech perception and speech discrimination. All right, another aspect of the physical direction is the auditory neuropathy spectrum disorder, aka auditory dyschronophy. Now, this is a hearing disorder where the sound is not transmitted correctly from the inner ear to the brain. So there's something about those hair cells in the cochlea where they're changing from a sound wave to an electrical impulse that's carried along to the auditory nerve to the hearing center in the brain, where there's something along that process where it's not being recognized by the brain a certain way, and that's why they call it a spectrum disorder too. It may look different from day to day, and we also have children with developing brains up to the age of 21 And this is with many of the other aspects of the physical direction, these all have learning implications, especially with our classrooms being so auditory involved. Yeah, so let's get back to our compass. All right, here we are back at our compass. And we just had that chance to preview the physical direction in the west. And while I didn't go over amplification options, just stayed focused on the physical mechanics of hearing. All right, so let's recalibrate, get back into the middle, think of the way we're going to get into our next perspective, and let's explore the south direction. Here we are in the south, talking about emotions, energy in motion. Perhaps you can recall or pull up that the response that you had to the question, how do you feel about this body area? Again, the ears, whether yours or somebody else's. Maybe you jotted that down. So take a moment to pull that up, and we're going to kind of cross-reference it, thinking about the feeling and the energy and the emotional response, utilizing this tool called the emotional spiral. Now, cannot say that I created this visual. I have no idea who did. I am including this visual because I found it so helpful when dealing with my own tinnitus. Perhaps you recall me talking a little about the overwhelm and frustration and I could even say despair at times that I felt of going to bed with it and waking up with it for a couple of days on end. But then the other side of that spectrum, the relief and joy when it would stop. Yeah, sorry, I had like a visceral response to remembering that. You're welcome to, whatever you jotted down, just kind of cross-referencing it to this visual. One of the ways that this particular emotional spiral visual was so beneficial is it kind of helped show me too that I was being caught in a loop of a little bit of my own self-talk. Whether I was talking about like, oh my God, I cannot get this hearing experience to stop. And I'm on my last leg of 3 days of hearing this every time that I'm awake. And that the only reprieve that I was having was while I was sleeping. Or the kind of like inner dialogue loop that I would have when waking up with tinnitus. And I realized that there was a piece here of like negative self-talk in the sense of the swear words sometimes that would come with, oh my God, I woke up with this again. But also pieces too around how I would talk to myself for those brief periods where it wasn't ringing. And the emotional response that I was having around those brief periods of quiet and how joyful that was. Even helping me to recognize too patience, because going through changes in a person's hearing experience can absolutely have an impact with patients and social interactions and how they feel about their own hearing, what they're hearing, and the interactions with others, feeling safe in those. And the emotional response can change and look different from day to day, even hour to hour. There's no perfect emotional experience. Like, this is very much a part of having a human experience. And to each and every single one of us, it may look so different from day to day. But I hope ultimately that this particular direction that everyone who's kind of viewing this can stay curious about their emotional experience and open to not only what that experience is for themselves, but to what that experience might be for someone else, that important person in their life. All right, so here we are back at our compass. We just explored the south direction, so now let's recalibrate, step into that middle, and look north and see what that perspective can offer us. So here we are in the north, talking about identity and self concepts. So let's dive in. We have capital D deaf versus little d deaf, and the major differentiation between these two is whether or not if a person is using sign language and feels connected to the deaf and hard of hearing community. With little d deaf, we're focusing in more on the audiological components of their specific type of hearing loss. We have hard of hearing, and that can be single-sided hearing loss or on the upper levels of an audiogram, so mild, minimal, mild, getting into a little bit of moderate, like the top end. Um, and this can look different from person to person. It also can change throughout a person's lifetime, and that can be sudden or gradual. And that kind of change can invite a person to really look inwards and see if maybe there's an identity piece has shifted. Maybe they wouldn't necessarily consider themselves as hard of hearing. Maybe they would now consider themselves as deaf. Um, Maybe they're now eligible for a cochlear implant or even a genetic treatment option. So many variables that come with that, and it can really impact how a person identifies with their hearing loss. Um, this kind of ties in now with autism, and that's the discrimination or prejudice against individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, and this has a real implication on employer to employee relations, friendships, as well as in the classroom, thinking about the kind of hearing experience that students have, whether or not if it's accessible or equitable. And those don't necessarily mean the same thing for every child out there. And that's where having a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing come in and support a student to really help lift up their advocacy skills and show them how to hone those skills in different uh, scenarios, so to speak, can be very helpful. And when a person feels confident in their advocacy skills, then you can really see their communication flourish. And so much of life is all about communication. So, yeah, identity can be fluid, lots of variables with it, and hearing doesn't necessarily stay stable throughout a person's lifetime. Amplification options can play a role in how a person identifies, um, and that's unique to the individual. Having a conversation with a person that's open and safe for them can be really beneficial and revealing for both people involved. So here we are, back at our compass. We've explored the cardinal directions: the east with faith and outlook, the west with physical, the south, the emotions that can come up with the hearing experience, and in the north, identity and self concepts, which can change over time. So that's just the cardinal directions. And I hope those have provided some interesting perspectives and moments where you can kind of go inwards and explore your own hearing experience and how you're interacting with others. Remember, this is to be a resource, to be helpful, and I hope it has been. Thank you for tuning in to the first episode of the Hearing series. It was a pleasure to explore the cardinal directions with you. And stay tuned, because in the next episode, we will explore the non-cardinal directions. So there's more to come. But for now, many thanks. And this has been Jessica Laurie with the Hearing Series. Bye for now.